Welcome to Breakthrough with Champs. I'm Natsuyo Lipschitz, and I'm so excited today because I have a very special guest, a professional Rakugo storyteller, Katsura Sunshine.
You say that very enthusiastically. A professional Rakugo storyteller. I think your whole audience is like, Rakugo? What's Rakugo?
Yeah, what's Rakugo? So for those who don't know, anything about Rakugo.
Rakugo. Well,
what do you do?
I could talk about that for about 3 hours.
Okay.
What Rakugo is, but the short version, the Reader's Digest version, is Rakugo is a 400-year-old tradition of Japanese storytelling.
Right, 400 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
The stories were originally composed by monks to entertain their congregation during the sermon.
Okay.
And then professional storytellers were born, and it really reached its peak during the Edo period. And the stories have been passed down from master to apprentice,
so many
through the generations until the present time.
Right.
And now it's not the peak for the number of Rakugo theaters in Japan, but it is the peak for number of storytellers. There's 800 storytellers between Tokyo and Osaka now.
Oh wow! And are you the only non-Japanese Rakugo teller?
I'm not. I was the only one for about 9 years, and last year 2 more joined, one from Sweden and one from Canada.
Wow.
I'm also not the first. I'm the second in history.
Okay.
The first one was 100 years ago. An Australian named Henry Black, who came to Japan when he was 7 with his father.
Right.
Became the first ever Rakugo storyteller.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're the first one in 100 years.
First one in 100 years.
Right.
It's difficult to put in a poster, right? I wish
I know.
Sometimes I wish he hadn't been there because it's just so easy to say the first.
But you're the
first one.
Right.
In 100 years.
In 100 years. Little caption.
The only one for the last 9 years,
right.
but now there's 2 more. It's just getting more and more difficult to do advertising.
I know, but you're inspiring a lot of people, right?
Who knows? I think they looked at me and they said, if he could do it, anyone could do it, so we'll join too.
You can do it too. Anyway,
sure, but anybody can do it.
So the Rakugo is an old, very, very old Japanese performing art.
Yes, traditional performing art.
And you're not Japanese, obviously.
Yeah.
You're Canadian.
Yeah.
And you speak English. And you do this in Japanese and English in many different countries to diverse audience who have different values and different sense of humor.
Yeah.
And there are so many different layers, like complex layers of cross-cultural issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone laughs at the same time. Like I saw the show that was November, right?
In November, we saw off Broadway.
2017. Last year, you made a Broadway debut.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And I was rolling on the floor for 90 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Everyone was laughing so much. How do you do that?
Yeah, you know what? It shouldn't be so easy. Because number one, humor doesn't usually translate.
Right.
And even for me as a Canadian and an English speaker, when I've lived in London for the last couple of years, and when I go out to comedy shows, there's about 1/3 of the humor that I don't even understand.
Right.
Because a lot of that is, if you grew up in London or in the UK, then you would understand. You watch the same TV shows there and all the cultural context that goes with it.
Right.
Those same comedians, when they leave London and go perform in the United States, go perform in Canada, they take out that stuff that only UK people are going to understand.
Right.
So they're already having to adapt for the place.
Yeah.
So here's Rakugo. It's a centuries-old art form. It's Japanese. And you know what? You don't have to adapt it. And at first, I was really surprised. Wow, I'm doing almost completely direct translation. My Japanese performance and my English performance are almost word for word the exact same performance, the same rhythm, same in Japanese you'd say ma, which is comic timing.
Right.
And yet people laugh all over the world. I did it in French as well in the same way.
Huh. So
here's
laughter is universal?
Well, some laughter is.
Okay.
That's what I found. And I realized that Rakugo has had to transcend the centuries. And 200 years ago, Japan was a very different place than it is now.
Right.
But people still laugh at these stories now. So they've achieved a simplicity and a directness and a universality that is timeless. But because it's timeless, you can also translate into any language and it'll cross the borders.
Wow, so that was so the simplicity, right? I think simple is a key.
Yeah.
When I saw your performance, I thought Rakugo, it was my first time seeing Rakugo ever in my life. But I thought it was the art of minimalism.
Yeah, absolutely.
You only use 2 props, and you're sitting down, which means you're only using the upper body to perform.
Yep.
And when you perform different characters, you're not overly acting, but you're making this subtle movements, subtle difference in body movements, for example,
Yeah.
to describe different characters.
Yep.
It's so minimal and simple.
It
that
is.
It's so hard to achieve.
We're taught during the apprenticeship, you don't waste your energy, and don't waste the energy of the audience. Just focus on what's important. So you noticed the very important minimalistic aspects of this art form. I move my head left, I'm playing one character. I move my head right, I'm playing another character, and every story ends in a punchline.
Right.
But it goes further than that. For example, my master does a very famous story called The Birth of Golf. Golf no yoyake mae. And it's Japanese historical figures.
Right.
Who suddenly discovered golf, and they're figures from history, and they're speaking in a very particular accent called Tosa Ben, which is the Tosa dialect, which is a very old dialect from a place far from Tokyo,
Right.
and people know what it sounds like, but it's an hour-long show, and he only uses this dialect for the first 5 or 6 minutes to delineate the characters, and then goes back to his own standard Osaka dialect with a little bit of the intonation of the Tosa dialect thrown in for the rest of the show. Because, and after the show,
the audience gets a
the
little
audience
tricked.
comes, the audience is tricked.
They get tricked,
The
right?
audience comes to him after and says, I can't believe you spoke Tosa dialect for 1
the
hour.
entire time.
And he's
No,
like, yeah, I
I
only
wasn't
spoke for
speaking.
5 minutes. But he said, and this is what he taught us apprentices, he said, you know what, if I spoke, I could do it. Of course I could do an hour in Tosa dialect. That's my job as I'm a performer.
Right.
But number one, I would get exhausted. Number two, the audience would get exhausted listening to this. And the Tosa dialect is not the key to the humor. The
Right.
characters and the situations are the key to the humor.
Right,
So you just create an atmosphere, and then you kind of let go of what's not necessary. That's how minimalistic it is. So
Right.
something that would not be conceivable in like Western theater, you're taught don't stay in character. So your character is the same from the beginning to the end unless it has a dramatic reason for changing. But this is not a dramatic reason for changing the dialect. It's a practical reason.
Right. Great.
A very different way of looking at the communication of it, right?
So I guess that the way the story is crafted, it's already really, really minimized to the polished to the minimum.
The stories are also very, very minimalistic. You will never see, I shouldn't say never, but you will usually only see 2 characters or 3 characters in dialogue at one time.
Okay.
And there may be more characters in the story, but then you just change scenes and you're playing different characters, or you follow one character through different situations.
Right.
But in order to, there is one story called Four Men's Habits.
Okay.
And each person, there's 4 guys, and each have a habit. One rubs his nose, one rubs his eyes, one pulls the sleeves of his kimono, and one says, fantastic, and slaps his hand. And they have a contest to see who can resist doing their habit. But here's a story that almost from beginning to end, you have 4 characters. And it's a short story. It's 10, 12 minutes. It's very difficult to keep those characters straight. As a performer, that's one of the most difficult stories I've attacked.
You have to be really, really focused.
Yeah, you have to really focus, because as soon as you lose focus, the audience is going to lose focus. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So there are a lot of mini stories and the main stories, right? So mini stories are called makura, correct?
Yeah.
And some of the mini stories are called are your own original stories.
Actually, the makura is usually 100% original. Everybody, and it's not even stories. It's not like stand-up comedy.
Right.
So it's observational humor. It's your experiences the other day. It's whatever you think.
Right.
If there's a storyteller who was not born in Osaka, he or she might talk about their experiences coming to Osaka for the first time and the crazy culture in Osaka.
Right.
Just the way I'm Canadian, and I talk about like what crazy things Japanese grammar contains and that kind of thing, right?
Right.
So the makura is your own material usually.
Okay.
Although you were talking about like little stories, kobanashi, or little stories.
Okay, so that's different.
They're ones that everybody shares. So it's like we all share material. They're older, master. You might take some from your master. You take some from your fellow storytellers.
I see.
And those are little warm up. They're almost like little jokes.
Okay.
So those are ones that might not be original, right?
Okay.
But the
So talking
point
about
of the makura, which is pillow in Japanese, right? And the idea, the reason it's called pillow is because before I take you into the dream world, which is the story, the world in your imagination, you have to go to sleep, and before you go to sleep, you have to lay your head on the pillow. Pillow talk is a little bit more
little
erotic.
different.
Yeah, that's when we do the erotic stories, but not the usual family
it's not
show.
Pillow talk.
Yeah.
No. How do you take the seed of the story to its perfection? Like, what's the process of developing your own story? And
Of my-
still sticking,
of my-
of your
of my own
story.
material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still sticking to the simplicity.
Well, you know what? It's very interesting. first half, the stand-up comedy half, the pillow half, it has a lot of purposes. First, it's kind of warming up the audience. Second of all, and this happens in my performance, people think it's an explanation of the story. But actually in Japan too, there's older or archaic parts of the story that the audience should know about before you get into the story. You use that part to communicate these things in a humorous way. So you're getting laughs, but you're also giving them an explanation to prepare them for the story. But the other part of it is, in Japan, a lot of times we don't choose the story until we're halfway through that introduction. Because you're looking at the audience and trying to figure out which story they will like. How many children are there? How many older people are there, right? There's more women than men. Do they like puns? They don't like wordplay. All these things, and you think, okay, maybe they'll like this story, and then you launch into your story.
Oh, wow.
So you're doing a lot of thinking during that time. And I think maybe...
So you're thinking and talking.
Yeah. I think this gets to the heart of maybe what you want to talk about is like presentation and communication. When I'm talking, 90% of my attention is on the audience, not what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is just coming automatically, but
that's
everything.
after practicing so many times, right?
Well, and it's also, it's practicing, but it's more just being used to speaking in front of people a lot, right? You can practice in your room as many times as you want, but if you're a robot when you go out,
in front of the live audience.
Yeah, so a lot of people say to me in Japanese, "Oh, Sunshine, Rakugo wa shaberi no shigoto dakara shaberi jouzu," right? Which sounds obvious, but actually my job is not to talk. My job is not a talking job. My job is a watching job and a listening job. I'm taking in a lot more than I'm putting out.
Right.
Because if you don't have your hand on the pulse of the audience, it's finished.
Right, exactly. I can say the same thing about public speaking.
The same thing as public speaking, absolutely.
Speeches. Some people think that it's a one-way communication because you're on stage and you're delivering a speech and they're listening. But it's interactive, right? It goes back and forth, and they make some reactions, and you bounce back to them, and then they'll bounce back something to you. It's like a catch-ball, right?
Absolutely. And I've talked to I've done a presentation with other speakers before who are not professional speakers, and they made a joke and it didn't go very well. People didn't laugh.
Right.
And then after, when we're drinking at the party after, they said, Sunshine, you're so funny, and I wish I could be funny, but I'm not funny. You saw what happened to my joke. I said, you know what? That was a funny joke. I said, that was a perfectly funny joke. You didn't notice that in your setup, in A, you had A, B, and C was the punchline. A, there was a noise in the audience, and people were distracted. They didn't hear what you were saying. And so they couldn't understand B, and then when it came to C, there was missing information, so they couldn't laugh. If you had just noticed that and repeated yourself, people, I guarantee you, people would laugh at that joke. I'll go up tomorrow and say the same joke in the exact same way, but make sure people are listening and show your joke, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I'll tell these people right now. And then I told other people who hadn't been listening to that, right? And everybody laughed. And I didn't change anything.
Right.
I just made sure you're checking that, make sure if they don't understand A, you can repeat it. You can say it in different words. You can ask them, do you get what I'm saying? You have to relax and make sure that is achieved before you get to the next part. And
so
I think that's where
timing is very important too. The ma or the pause. Maybe?
Yeah, but it all comes down to listening to the audience. Like, are they understanding? And so there's some audiences who are keyed in, and then you don't need ma. You just go. You just motor along and along. You can go so fast because they're sucking it all in. But the other audiences can be distracted. There might be a noise. They might be still not settled yet. There's all kinds of reasons where they're not processing. You have to see it in their eyes, right?
So you have to be really observant.
Observant, absolutely.
Matching with the audience.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's a skill.
That's why people talk about ma or timing, and they say, "Well, is your master's a genius at the timing, at the ma? Does he teach that to the apprentices? He can't teach that.
Right.
The master never says.
You just have to do.
The master will look at your performance when you're performing together, and when you come off, he'll say maga warukata. But he can't teach you man to man or man to woman or whatever. He can't teach you ma.
Right.
Because if the audience is there, you don't know what that ma is.
That's something you have to feel from the
Fear.
audience.
Every single time is
every
different.
audience is different, right?
When I was apprentice for 3 years, I watched my master for 3 years doing his tours, and he would do the same story all year and then change the story the next year for his Japan tour, generally. So I would hear the same stories, the same performance from beginning to end, almost the same, 10, 15, 20, 30 times. It's different every time. Different every single time. And the words were never different. It's not the words, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard so many great speakers, and I have a master too, and I've heard his same speech over and over, but I always laugh at the same different points too. I always laugh, and I always feel like, wow, I got inspired, and I got something out of it this time. You know, something different.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? Even when they're
so
incredible that way,
Right.
you can laugh at the exact same joke 100 times. My seniors, my anideshi, or the older brother storytellers, sometimes I'd be at the side of the stage. We did lights and sound for our master, right? I'd be sitting there laughing. And the older guys would say, "You heard this at least 20 times. Why are you laughing?" I don't know. It's just so funny. Yeah. But they say, you're right.
I guess
Master's a genius.
But the way to keep it fresh every time is, I guess, to be spontaneous.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I was just watching Jim Carrey and Jerry Seinfeld in a dialogue on TV yesterday, and one of them said stand-up comedy is like going in front of the audience. It's like surfing. You catch the wave of the audience, and once you get it, and that one sentence encapsulated 100% how I feel. And I've never surfed before, but I can only imagine what surfing must feel like when you catch that wave, and then nothing can stop you.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Like the first little bit is like, okay, what's this audience about here?
Right.
Where can I catch it? And then once you got it, usually you don't fall off. Sometimes you do, and then you have to get back up again. And sometimes that's difficult, but you can do it. You have to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Or you drown. Now we're getting very, very dramatic about this metaphor.
It's going to be so, high waves.
Yeah.
But so, what would be the tips of giving a captivating stories to the diverse audience?
I'd say it doesn't even matter if it's diverse. Your number one, you have to be in tune to the audience. Forget about what you're saying, what you're talking about. You should have that all in your mind anyway. And just try, and this only comes through experience, but just try to be in tune with the audience. Is the audience understanding every single step? And don't worry about going back, saying things twice, repeating, emphasizing, asking the audience a question. Make sure you've got them.
Okay.
Some people say don't read.
Right.
You should memorize your speech and then say it. I don't believe that.
You can't really memorize it. I mean,
Well,
you can, but you have to internalize it, and it has to come out really naturally.
But there's people who read speeches who are perfectly in tune with the audience. There's authors who read from their books, but they're in tune with the audience, right?
Yeah.
So make eye contact. So then you have people making sure they look at this person for 5 seconds, and then they look at this person for 5ve seconds, but they're not registering.
Okay,
they're not registering. There's got to be a lot more coming in that's going out. If you look at it that way, then you'll be fine.
Like I said before, it's a two-way communication.
Yeah.
So I guess speaking, or Rakugo too, in general, is not a speaking business, but it's a listening business.
Watching and listening business.
Yeah, watching and listening.
Public speaking, the new watching and listening business.
Yeah.
That's our catchphrase for the day.
Yeah, interesting. So you're now based in New York?
I just moved to New York. Yep.
Okay. So you just made a Broadway debut last year, and then you published a book, which I bought.
I did. Wow, thank you very much. And you're holding it up there.
You know what? Yep.
Oh, that's right. I thought it was upside
My
down.
favorite part is you get Mini Sunshine.
Mini Sunshine,
And
Mini Me.
My 6-year-old daughter was playing with this morning. Like,
Right. But it's not folded. That's nice.
Yep.
Good girl. Raised well.
So what's next?
Yeah, so I moved to New York. We did 3 weeks off Broadway, but I want to do the show for a longer run and renovate the theater so that it's a real Japanese Rakugo Yosei vaudeville house. Give people a real Japanese experience. So we're just looking for a theater right now, and we hope to open in October of this year, 2018.
Oh wow, great! Well, that's very exciting.
Yeah, so maybe if your 1.5 million viewers come, we'll run for 2 years.
Yeah, 2 million viewers.
2 million. Sorry, I apologize. Are they all in New York?
No, all over the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So New York from October.
Yep.
Sunshine's waiting for you.
October 2018. All right. So I will ask you so many more questions, but maybe we'll save it for next time.
Save it for next time. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful coming by. Cheers.
Thank you for watching.
Arigatou
See you next time.
gozaimashita.